For me, it's not about admonishing the population that thou shalt no longer release CO2 into the atmosphere, because look around. Everything that we use is touched by fossil fuels. I mean, the plastics in the camera are made of fossil fuels. Some of our clothing is made of fossil fuels. The soles on our shoes, and most of our structures have got fossil fuels embedded in them. The insulation. I mean, there's so many places where fossil fuels have become crucial to our lifestyle that to make this transition away from oil is going to be incredibly difficult.
In order to begin this difficult transition, an emphasis on sustainability should be ever present in our lives. Sustainability can be defined as living in a manner that satisfies current needs without compromising the needs of future generations.
The future is far off, and benefits in the future are very diffuse, as economists might put it. And it's hard, for example, to convince someone that they should pay a bunch of money now for these shimmering benefits sometime in the future.
You're adding greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, trapping a few watts of energy. That's Christmas tree bulbs energy worth over every square meter of the earth. That's a lot of heat. That cannot cause no change. It has to do something. What we've not known, and still don't know very well, is it going to warm us up 1 more degree or 6? Something we'd rather not have, but we could adapt to, or something catastrophic.
Climate change is detrimental to maintaining and acquiring global solidarity. Striving to ensure a balance between the present and the future will help minimize growing struggles, as well as protect basic needs and promise for the future.
The U.S. remains a difficult player. We're more heavily addicted to fossil fuel than any country on Earth, and so it's politically difficult for our leaders to make the kind of changes that the science requires.
We have to have an international dialogue to deal with climate change because the climate change issue is an international one. It's a shared problem. It's one that we can't exclude people from, and as a result, it requires a shared collective response.
Denmark's capital city, Copenhagen, was host to the 15th Conference of the Parties, also known as COP15. Thousands of scientists, politicians, youth, business people, activists, and world leaders attended the conference. COP15 was more than just the expected political negotiations. It was a hub for dialogue, ideas, and collaborative opportunity unparalleled in history. Individuals were able to share their experiences and knowledge about climate change on a personal level. The conference brought vitality to Copenhagen and promoted awareness about climate change on an international scale. COP15 is part of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or the UNFCCC. The UNFCCC was created in 1992 at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Its goal was to act as a non-binding framework to work towards stabilizing greenhouse gas emissions. The first COP took place in Berlin, Germany in 1995. It addressed individual concerns and set up a framework that would allow countries to experiment with various options to address climate change. In December of 1997, at the third COP in Kyoto, Japan, the UNFCCC created the Kyoto Protocol. The protocol developed a legally binding international environmental treaty with the goal of stabilizing greenhouse gas emissions. 7 of the 192 member nations did not sign the agreement. The United States was the only country to explicitly reject the agreement. COP15 presented the opportunity for the remaining UNFCCC members to ratify the Kyoto Protocol, as well as to discuss new issues that have risen over the last 13 years.
There's no place which is going to be safe. If we go down, we all go down. We have the chance of survival, and more than just survival. Well, we have the chance of building a new world where we begin to see that we are in fact family.
One of the problems with the Copenhagen meeting is that there's a lot of feeling that it isn't so serious for the big nations, the nations that are just dumping all the CO2 in the atmosphere. They're not taking it anywhere near as seriously as the Pacific Islanders, the Samoans, and the people in Papua New Guinea who look at this as potentially loss of their whole life space.
Where it's really tricky is in the negotiation, you can't have one size fits all, because certain developing countries, industrial countries, some countries have to adapt various policies. So it's got to be really a flexible policy. The big question is, okay, what is it going to be our targets that we're going to set? And I refer to our targets as parts per million of carbon dioxide.
The critical line in the sand is 350 parts per million CO2. Above that, as Jim Hansen, the NASA scientist, wrote in the abstract of a peer-reviewed paper, above that, you can't have a planet similar to the one on which civilization developed and to which life on Earth is adapted. That's strong language, especially strong since we're already past it at about 390 parts per million, which is why the Arctic is melting, why all these other things are happening.
The warmest periods of the cycle of the ice age is 180 parts per million. The warm area is 280. So you have a fluctuation between 180 and 280. That's the natural variation. We're up at 385, which is another notch above the warmest period. That's where we're at right now. We're in the danger zone.
There are so many effects in Zambia, just like in other African countries, more especially the sub-Saharan countries. Zambia, it's one of the most poorest countries in the world. 80% of its people are poor. It is pressing another burden on Zambia, because we already have burdens that which we are supposed to sort out, like HIV and AIDS, and those things like food, education for all. But with the effects of climate change, things are now worsening.
There's been extremely, let me emphasize, extremely high temperatures, like of about 42 degrees Celsius just this past summer. And there have been a whole lot of floods and heavy rains. And that's caused a lot, because when the floods and heavy rains, there's a higher chance of diseases being spread through the water, because some people do not have access to clean water. So if they take some water from the river, which is dirty, they drink it, they have a disease, and they may spread it around. And then the extreme high temperatures cause people to have some heat strokes and sunburn.
Like in the southern region of Zambia, it once used to be our food basket, but now it's a different story. Once a food basket, but today the province is now entirely depending on the government for food supply. That has caused poverty, and that has caused, the levels of malnutrition to go up. Yeah, it's quite challenging because the number of climate refugees, it's increasing because too much flooding in some areas, and also some areas there are no rains, so people they are shifting from their areas to better areas, and coping it's something which is very, very difficult.
For Kenya, climate change has actually, there are two main things, this drought and famine. It's like a huge area is being affected by drought, and there's shortage of food and shortage of water. Especially in my community, get as young people fail to go to school, and instead they go look for water and for food, because when you're hungry, of course, you can't sit in class. That's why you get most people lack education, because you have no time to go to school, you have to go look for something to eat.
I have seen those effects. Sure, I've seen villages that have been affected, I've seen people who have been affected, and if nothing is going to happen, I don't know where this world will be in the next near future, or especially Africa.
It's important, I think, to work on climate change because countries are definitely experiencing the effects already, especially the poor countries. There are many people now that are seeing their the ocean levels rise, and countries such as Kiribati, the Marshall Islands, Palau and Micronesia, these places see their future possibly end decades away when their countries are inundated by water. So for them, climate change is a very serious and up close and personal sort of problem.